Hey, Pat, I think we're just going to get started.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Abu Edwards. I have the opportunity to serve as a consultant with the Committee of 70 on this councilmatic redistricting community input sessions. For those who do not know who I am, I'm a kid who grew up in Philadelphia all his life. I've been in the organizing political game for about 10 years. I worked on a lot of different campaigns dealing with issue-based advocacy, and some of you guys may know me working on political campaigns. I'm very committed to, bringing our communities together to educate them on the important issues that they're going to be facing in 2021 and 2022. Today, we'll be joined with my colleague, Patrick Christmas from the Committee of 70. And before I actually jump in to let you guys know what we're here for, I'm going to pass it over to him so he can introduce himself. Pat?
Sure, thank you. Hey, good evening, everybody. Pat Christmas here, staffer with the Committee of 70. You're really excited to have a good solid group here to talk about council district boundaries. This is one of 12 meetings we're having virtually across the city, specifically on the council redistricting process. I have been a staffer at 70 for some number of years, but was actually a high school science teacher. I was up at Fells High School for about 5 years before that, which was, if I can find my way back in the classroom, I will certainly try to do that. But pleasure to be here with you this evening talking about council boundaries.
And also I would like to give a shout out to some of our host organizations who've helped us get the word out and been committed to this cause as well. I'd like to give a shout out to Nicetown CDC, Miss Majida, and also Hunting Park United, Mr. Fisher. So thank you guys so much for helping us get the word out. Today, we have 3 simple goals that we're trying to facilitate in this session. The first goal is we want to make sure that everybody learns about councilmatic redistricting process and why it really matters. We want to examine the current city council map and population counts. And we want to discuss the city council district boundaries in your particular area. I know that, we are having a community input session. I ask that people be very respectful and understand that this is a community input session geared towards councilmatic redistricting. This is not a session to talk about issues pertaining in your community. Do we have both for the city council offices represented on this call from the 8th councilmatic district and the 5th councilmatic district before we proceed?
And I saw at least 1 or 2 folks from the 4th as well, which would be Allegheny West.
And the 4th, okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any of the offices here represented tonight?
I'm here representing Councilmember Brooks. Who's not large member but does live in the district in question.
Thank you.
Good evening. This is Josh Cohen. I'm the Chief of Staff for Councilmember Jones of the 4th District, and I believe I'm joined by my colleague Shirley Davis, our Deputy Chief of Staff.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for being with us. All right, so also, this is going to be like a very short presentation. What we're going to do, we're going to open it up at the end for discussion. So if you guys can bear with us to kind of let us get the information out to you, and then at the end, we can go back to different slides that you guys want to talk more about. Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
All right, let's jump into the PowerPoint, Pat. What is councilmatic redistricting? I know that a lot of people are kind of bombarded with the word redistricting because we have 3 different levels of redistricting happening all at once. We have the federal, the congressional redistricting, the state redistricting, and now the councilmatic redistricting. The reason why we're focusing more of the councilmatic redistricting process is because, council redraws their 10 districts every 10 years. After the US Census releases their population data. And during that process, normally that process is not really a transparent process like the congressional redistricting and the statewide redistricting, where they have more of a committee or a bipartisanship effort. According to the 2020 census, the Philadelphia population is just over 1.6 million. Meaning that roughly every councilmatic district has to have roughly about 160,000. To kind of break it down to you a little bit more, Philadelphia is broken down into 10 councilmatic districts, but we have 17 council people, right? 7 council people are considered city council at large, where they're kind of city representatives, right? And we have 10 council people who represent council districts in particular parts of the city, where that's where their power, their focus, and that's where they have a lot of movement and power over. A mapping ordinance must be completed by February 12th. If not, then all council members, by the bylaws, all council members can't get paid. Next slide, please. Why is redistricting, why does it matter? It determines the voice in the political process. We've seen from 2001, 2011, that, the voices matter. When you have districts split from one side of the street to the other, or from one part of the city crossing a boulevard to the next, it limits the voices to the constituents in that particular area. And also, it's very hard and difficult for the elected official who represent that area to really travel from one part of the city to the other. Many communities are often served by being kept whole. We've seen that, and it's kind of simple, right? If you have a community where it's like you're compacted and everybody's near each other, and the council person can represent and take care of their corridors or take care of that community, then that community comes out and vote and they have that voice. But when communities are split, the representation is split. The councilmatic priorities are split. And that right there impacts communities. Next slide, please. How should the boundaries change? And I think, when we look at 2001, and I have to tell people all the time, we've had some progress. From 2021 to 2011, we've had some major progress. And I'm going to turn it over to Pat to kind of talk about that progress and how moving into 2021, what's expected.
Sure. Thank you. So, yeah, guys, as I would note, like this first, there's a lot of ground we're covering, and also like if the nitty gritty of the process is not sinking in quick, that's okay, because the main priority of the meeting and the discussions is actually to take a look at the boundaries drawn right now, right, in your general area, and talk about whether or not they're in the best places or not. I mean, some boundaries across the city will surely stay the same. Others are going to have to change, and we don't know exactly what that'll look like until City Council introduces a proposal. So, to Abu's point here, like the maps here kind of speak for themselves. The one that was drawn in 2001, clearly there's a problem there, right? That term gerrymandering that kind of shows up in our social studies textbooks, usually when you see it there, it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. But when it's actually done in the real world, there are consequences. So in this instance, in 2001, and this was the same map that was drawn 10 years prior to that as well. The 7th district, right? That part of the city, that part of North Philly, East North Philly, has had a large, growing, diverse Latino community for a long, long time. And you can see the 7th district there was drawn such that it extended all the way up pretty far to the northeast, up to Grant Avenue, basically picking up a bunch of voters up there in the northeast who are not Latino, and effectively diluting the voting power, diluting the political power of the Latino community in North Philly. So they were harmed by that map. All the numerous neighborhoods and communities that were split in that 2001 map, they were harmed. As Abu noted, I mean, generally, not always necessarily, but generally, it's helpful to keep communities whole within a given district. And sometimes you're able to do that. Sometimes there are tensions, there are natural tensions when you draw a map just across the city, and sometimes you have to split a neighborhood or you have to split a community, but generally you try to keep them together. And so the 2001 map, unfortunately, is a recent example we have where not only was the Latino community harmed and having their political power diluted, but all the various neighborhoods, especially in North Philly there along the Roosevelt Boulevard, and all stretching all the way up into the northeast, wherever they were split, they're just not going to get the same attention they would otherwise, right? And even our elected officials have to cover a lot of ground. These are huge districts. If it's only like one little piece of a community that's in a given district, they're just not going to get the attention they would, again, otherwise. So the 2011 map, you can see, is in far better shape. The districts are far more compact. And we got to stress that the reason that is because there was a great deal of advocacy, a great deal of community engagement across the Philly, but especially in North Philly. And there was a lot of hard work done inside City Hall and inside City Council as well. And we got a better result at the end of the day. So that is the big question here, right? From 2001, where we clearly had a problematic map. The 2011 map, which I think a lot of Philadelphians will probably say this is in much better shape. And a lot of Philadelphians may look at the boundaries nearby them and say, hey, that actually makes a lot of sense. Other parts of the city, they may have something to say about how the boundaries should shift one way or another. So here, Abu, I'll hand it back over to you to talk about some of the dynamics here.
Next slide, please. So as we stated before, there's been an increase in population based on the census data that was released in 2020. And, in 4 councilmatic districts, we are going to see some type of shift, right? As we stated, the target population for each councilmatic district has to have around roughly 160,000 people. So the first councilmatic district has 171,000, right? So that means that they have to lose and give up a population, right? And when we say give up a population of a couple of thousand people, what does that mean, right? Does those couple of thousand people have a say on leaving that council district? Or do they just wake up overnight and say, oh, wow, I'm in a different council person? And it can be frightening to the person, to the constituent, because every council person has different priorities in their particular district. Every council person has different programs that they care about, that they care particularly for their district. So when we look at District 1, we have to figure out, where are they going to lose population? Is it going to go to the 7th? Is it going to go to the 6th? Is it going to go to the 5th? Or is it going to go to the 2nd? But then the 4th councilmatic district has to pick up, because, it hasn't had that much growth. So they have to pick up a couple of thousand, right? So where does the 4th pick up? Does the 4th pick up from the 5th? Because the 5th has 171 and they have to lose a couple of thousand. And then the 8th has to pick up a few thousand, to be in that ballpark. So we're going to see a shift in population. So even though there's 4 councilmatic districts that's going to see a shift, that's going to impact other districts. And when it impacts even a block, I think that people should have a say in how they're represented, because we don't know if we're breaking up, voting blocks. We don't know if we're breaking up, language, barriers. We don't know. And I think that's something that we have to pay attention to. So based on the 4 councilmatic districts that have to shift in population, let's figure out where does these people go. Let's open it up for discussion on, what you think your councilmatic district should look like. And before I kind of open up to the general discussion for everyone, there was a few people who actually signed up to speak on this particular issue. So Scott, Pat, if you don't have any follow-up, I can just kind of call this the next person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, it's great. You could just stress like one thing on the slide here, and then we'll jump right into it. Just because again, because I know this is like a lot of ground we're covering really quick. So Abu noted earlier, right? The city's population now is about 1.6 million people, and you divide that by 10, right? The 10 council districts, that gets you the 160,000 up in the upper left-hand corner. So the kind of the rule of thumb here is it can have a bit of a difference, or a gap, a 10% gap really, between the smallest district and the biggest district. The smallest district, the district with the fewest people in the new map, can have no fewer than 152,000 people. The biggest district, the district with the most people in the new map, can have no more than 168,000. So that's where those districts that Abu was just calling out have to change, right? The 1st and the 5th have too many people in them, right? There's been a lot of development there, a lot of new residents, gentrification, some number of divisions, and by divisions we mean election precincts. Some number of divisions will have to transfer from one district to another to move those people from one district to another. And then the 4th and the 8th, as you noted, those are coming in shallow. Those are a little bit low. Those have fewer than 152,000. So they will have to pick up at least several thousand people each to get safely within that range. If you're wondering what would happen, what would happen if we just drew a district with 200,000 and another district with like 150,000 or 120,000? I think that map would probably wind up in court pretty quick, and that court would tell City Council to try again, draw a map where the population numbers are kind of tighter or more equal between the districts. So again, I realize we're covering a lot of ground here, but like what we're really stressing here is that because some districts have more people than others, and they have to kind of fall within this range of 152,000 to 168,000. That's what kind of forces some amount of change within the map. And I don't think anyone expects a radically different map. In fact, the cores of these districts have been the same for decades, but some amount of change is going to have to happen. And actually, one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we cover this general area, right? Allegheny West, Tioga, Nicetown, Hunting Park, these communities just south of the boulevard, is because you got several different districts coming together. The 5th has too many people. The 8th has too few. The 4th also has too few. The 7th actually kind of right now falls within that range. So this is kind of one of the parts of the city where maybe the boundaries could shift, maybe not. And that's where we'd like to get feedback from y'all as far as the boundaries as they look right now, right? What looks good? What sort of change might you want to see? And again, this is actually I forgot to note at the outset, like we're recording all these meetings as well, because all of this is basically part of a public record that for City Council and their staff, but then also anybody else outside City Hall who may be drawing a map. They have some documentation, some record of what folks think about these boundaries across the city. So again, realize that there are a lot of numbers here on the screen. But that's basically where this comes from, is some districts have too many, some have too few, and therefore some number of divisions will have to change hands from one district to another. So yeah, I think I rambled on for a little bit too long there, but let me hand it back to you, and we can start talking about these districts.
No problem, Pat. I appreciate that. So let's kind of jump into the community conversation. This is kind of the fun part. You kind of want to go to the map, Pat?
Yep, we'll do right now.
So I'm actually looking at the individuals who signed up to speak today. Is Leroy Fisher, Sharon Carter, Joyce Brooks on the call? Robert Hunter, Russell, Tina Marie, Madeline is on the call. Okay.
Yep, doesn't look like it. Not yet, at least.
Okay. If not, I would just like to I'll open it up. Do anyone have any if anybody would like to have anything to say, or discussions on what part of the areas that you particularly live in that may change?
And I'll kind of warm things up here as folks are kind of getting themselves accustomed to that. I know it's probably a little bit disorienting here when we throw up yet another version of the city council map, but let me just zoom out for a second here. So right here in the middle of the city, where I think you should be able to see the little cursor hovering, right? That's where City Hall is, right? That's the intersection between Broad Street going north-south and Market Street going east-west. So of course, with the areas that we'd like to talk about this evening, we're a little bit farther north up here, where you have the 4th district, right? Which is again, these districts are huge, right? Upwards of 160,000 people in each, a lot of area, a lot of territory to cover. 4th district here with Allegheny West being on this corner. The 8th district that covers a good portion of Tioga and Nicetown here, and then Hunting Park, at least part of Hunting Park, which is in this little extension of the 5th. With the rest of it being over here in the 7th. So again, at least for this evening, this was the area where we'd welcome folks' thoughts. And I guess to the extent this is helpful to start to weigh in, there are kind of a couple questions that I think would be worth thinking about. One is your community, right? And your community, that's kind of that's a big maybe even amorphous kind of a subject, but because community can be different. Community can be your neighborhood, community can be your business corridor, your language or ethnic group. It could be your part of the city, yeah, right? North Philly, South Philly, West Philly. But particularly when it comes to the neighborhoods that are so well known here, Allegheny West, Tioga, Nicetown, Hunting Park. There are others around here as well. If you could also speak to the community that you're a part of, and to the extent there are shared boundaries around that community. I mean, that'd be helpful to know too, right? I mean, not everybody knows exactly where the boundaries are for any given neighborhood. And then further, depending on where you are in the city, there can be some differences of opinion about where exactly the boundaries are. So that's kind of one big question, which we'd welcome people to weigh in on this evening, is like, your community, however you define it and see it, where are those shared sense of boundaries? And then really critically, like Abu noted, we'd really love to hear what folks got to say about the current council boundaries as they are drawn right now, right? You got the 4th district in red, the 8th district in purple, the 5th in yellow, and then there's a piece of the 7th over here on the right-hand side, right? And the basic question is like, how well do these boundaries kind of include the various communities up here in this part of North Philly? So to the extent that's kind of helpful to kind of get ourselves oriented here around the area, again, we'd love to kind of open the floor for whoever likes to kind of talk about either their community or the district boundaries first. And also looking through the participant list, there are some folks here who I think we know very well. They know these areas and got a lot to say, at least about the communities that are here and kind of where they are. So we'd love to hear from you. Any initial thoughts? Or questions, mind you, about all the ground we've covered so far? All right. Well, realize it's been a whole lot. I mean, if I can put this question in the group, and again, you could put this out, you can speak to this out in the open, in the chat. You will also have other opportunities to kind of weigh in on this this question later in a survey. But again, kind of where you live or where you work. I mean, are you close to one of these boundaries? Are you crossing over one or the other a good bit? And kind of welcome any thoughts on just kind of like where you are, or if you do kind of community work in a given area, you end up working with different council offices. Any of that information can be really helpful.
Hi, Pat. I just want to jump out there and just ask this question. I think we went over this before in one of your other workshops. Just in light of the fact that movement has to take place from one division to another, one district to another. It was stated before that a lot of times that will mean that your council member may change. And that's often a challenge for communities. Can you kind of share some of the things that may have happened in the past when this kind of activity takes place?
Yeah. Good question. Well, I guess one is just, again, when if a given community is represented by multiple council members, it can be not necessarily, but it can be more challenging to address a given issue in an area, just because you have to work with multiple offices. Sometimes it can kind of make it sometimes more complicated, more fraught, sometimes not. But then as far as the council members themselves, and also just it's a really good question, but also to be very clear for our purposes, this meeting and all the others, we're trying to focus on the boundaries themselves and not the members. But it's a really good question because it's difficult. It's very difficult to kind of separate those things, right? Like Abu noted, the council members just have their different elected officials, and they have different approaches to things. So I mean, and this is really one of the ways that can have a consequence on a given area if you go all of a sudden from one council district to another, and then you end up initially with one council member who approaches things a given way. And then, like Abu noted, like you'll wake up on the other side of this process and you'll be in another council district where things work another way. One actually kind of really unusual, perhaps a new kind of concrete way this comes into effect. And I think this is certainly new in any of the redistricting cycles we've had in the city of Philadelphia, is that with the zoning process, right there, and the zoning processes and zoning code is basically these rules around what can get built or not get built, or what can get built in a certain way. There are a number of overlays that have been put in place by City Council. Overlays are basically a certain set of rules for a large portion or for a certain part of the city as far as development goes. And what is very new about this particular redistricting cycle from this year to 10 years ago is that for the first time, we have multiple council districts with zoning overlays, specific rules for development that are district specific, right? For the 5th district specifically, or for the 9th district specifically, there's several of them that have these district specific overlays. So in a really concrete sense, a given community or given properties can on one side of this process be subject to one set of zoning rules, and then on the other side of the process be subject to another set of zoning rules. So that's just kind of one way in terms of the regulations that someone may be subject to, how this can have an effect. But again, and of course, not speaking to individual members, but to your point, it's a really good question. Yeah, if you're represented by one member right now and by another member on the other side of this mapping process, yeah, I mean that could kind of create a set of differences perhaps. And I guess actually it's a really good question. Something else I'll stress and note is that when we redraw these maps, there is a bit of a backstop on them, and like Abu noted, it's a little bit unusual. But if the mapping plan is not approved by mid-February, all of council will start going with that with their paychecks for a certain amount of time. It's kind of an unusual backstop to provide some emphasis to get or some incentive to get the job done. But we actually will not be using these maps until the next 2023 municipal election. It's a huge election for the city of Philadelphia. All 17 members will be on the ballot. And so, there will surely be folks running for these seats in that year. And that'll also be a factor in ultimately who you get represented by. So, yeah, that's a really good set of questions, and I'm glad we aired that out real quick. If I could bring it back to you real quick. I mean, could you just for Nicetown, could you just kind of lay out for us for Nicetown the general kind of boundaries that at least in your mind, or maybe in a whole bunch of people's minds, kind of where Nicetown is? That's a good example. There's a pretty firm sense of that.
Well, basically, Nicetown is defined by, I would say, on the northwest side is where the Wayne Junction is.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the other side of the Wayne Junction where Berkeley is our boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Southwest to Hunting Park and Hunting Park Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
and Clarissa. And you know that Clarissa boundary is kind of where it leads back. You come back around Hunting Park up Clarissa, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of gets tricky around there where it goes to Berkeley, but it follows Berkeley all the way up northeast to Broad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Broad to Wyoming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's basically Nicetown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So most for the most part south of Roosevelt Boulevard.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess funny enough, the Nicetown label that this particular map has down here, that's not. I guess you want to say that's not quite, square in the middle of Nicetown. You say the heart of Nicetown,
Like borderline. Yeah.
Right where your CDC is.
Yeah, and that's a little pocket right there. It's
Mm-hmm.
considered Nicetown. We have areas that are called Upper Nicetown and all kind of fancy stuff. But
Right. Well, is there any part of Nicetown that or shared sense of where Nicetown is that right now is on the other side of Broad here in the yellow part that's where the 5th district is, right by Hunting Park, or is it all on the west side of Broad Street here?
that's the only way we get into that is with our NAC program. We have a NAC program, so we have different service area boundaries, totally different from what I just said. That's kind of governed by census tracts or census block groups. So in that regard, our NAC service area crosses Broad Street in Census Tract 203, which will take us down to our service area. I mean, it kind of gets like the shape of a boot, but it goes across Broad Street down towards the edge of Temple emergency room. And that is, yeah. Yeah, Pike.
Gotcha. So that's interesting. I think you actually just named another layer that actually I've neglected to bring out more often, that is for a given organization that may be predominantly associated with with a specific neighborhood with one set of boundaries, may also have a need with boundaries that actually stretch a bit farther out.
Yeah, because if you go by our NAC boundaries, it gets crazy. We cross a couple council districts and 3 or 4 different portions of 3 or 4 other neighborhoods in all of Nicetown.
Got it.
So what I said initially was Nicetown proper is basically our catchment area and where we do development and things like that for the most part.
Got it. Okay. All right. Very helpful. Very helpful. I mean, well, actually, if Majid, if I could just put you on the spot. I mean, if you want to come, come to this later, we can. I mean, I guess the boundary right now, though, if most of Nicetown or Nicetown proper is fully within the 8th district right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah.
It's just the NAC.
Nicetown proper, yeah.
It's just the NAC coverage kind of extends across broad and into Okay. Yeah. So I mean, this. Yeah, I mean, you have any initial kind of thoughts on the boundary? Kind of still mulling over. I mean, if Nicetown is kind of squarely within the 8th already, I mean, it's not perhaps not a split community the way we may see in other parts of the city.
Oh my goodness. I was just thinking about, I know some of our leadership would like to gravitate towards another portion of another district. But you said don't talk about that kind of stuff, right?
Well, there are all sorts of preferences here. There are all sorts of preferences
But we can't go towards a district that already has to pick up population. So
yeah,
I would say that.
Yeah.
That gives it away right there.
Well, one of the again, I think a kind of a primary consideration here is like if a community is whole within a district, it's generally it's going to have a better shot of advocating for things.
Yeah, we're all in the 8th, and just if you just glance at everything you've taught, you and Abu have been teaching us, it just looks like naturally we would gravitate towards the 5th.
Well, I mean, like you mentioned, like the NAC extends over broad, right? And you all work with the Hunting Park organizations a great deal,
right? That's our community partners.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, if you could, I mean, there's several different organizations over here in Hunting Park that do work, but that you guys collaborate with a great deal between Nicetown and Tioga, and perhaps all the way over to Allegheny West on various things.
Yeah, because I don't know if anybody's on from Tioga United. I think so, but we all try to work together to get what we have to do done. So we still would have that capacity to do that, whichever way we gravitated, because we try to work with all our neighboring organizations.
Yeah. Well, maybe this may be an interesting example of where you have a number of different communities here, similar communities dealing with similar issues, similar circumstances, work together all the time, but right now are across 3 different, 3, arguably 4, I guess, if you include the stuff in this part of Hunting Park, 4 different districts. Again, I don't think we don't have any discussion about why things were drawn this way. I think we have, of course, like a lot of straight lines here and kind of more major roads that they were trying to stick to, perhaps. But this is one where in this particular meetings, we're not going to get into proposed changes, but it's possible there could be changes here where there would be fewer splits, perhaps between these different communities. I think it's just something for all of us to kind of keep in mind, especially once council puts a mapping proposal out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Pat, I think, to get people like really creative, council is going to propose maps, right? And I think, what we're trying to figure out, even if we don't figure out right now, and we hope you guys partake in, is the fact that if you had the power of the pen, what map would you propose in your neighborhood? And if that means drawing the map, going across, extending boundaries, having a longer corridor, being in a different councilmatic district, like, create it. It helps, to let, elected officials know exactly where their organizations and their community leaders stand. I think it's very important that you guys take that opportunity to draw these maps and to be really creative and to look at the maps and to figure out, because everybody wants interest in these maps. City council is they're putting their interest, right? And I think as community leaders, you have to make sure that your interest is engaged in this mapping process and that your voice is heard. So a portion of that is making sure that we're drawing the maps and submitting those maps to council. I also wanted to kind of let Mr. Fisher, I know he just joined us, to have a few words, because I know that he would definitely wanted to, talk more, with the Huntington Park area and all that good stuff. Mr. Fisher?
Hey, thanks for having me, and please forgive me for my lateness. Taking care of some personal matters. Yeah, like you were saying, the ability for organizations that are existing and have the relationships with residents in these particular areas will go a long way. So I think that tying to the predominant organizations, churches, and civic leaders in these particular areas and seeing what their ideal wish list will go a long way, and have some reference point that our elected council members could look at and say, hey, this is what, the strong organizations that are bringing people to the table are really looking for and really looking at. But if we leave it to just council members to sit in a room and divvy up areas, I think that we're going to miss some relationships that are established between councilmatic districts and this proposed change.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Leroy Potter here. I'm glad. I'm so glad you made it. Could you, because Miss Majida was talking about just kind of the general boundaries of Nicetown, and then also we learned that the NAC coverage actually kind of extends outside of Nicetown proper, which is a nuance I wasn't aware of. I mean, could you talk about the hunting park community, kind of generally how you defined kind of where the communities are, the boundaries are, just of the neighborhood community?
So Majida won't like this, but I'll say that she's the voice of Nicetown, and unofficially I'm the mayor of Hunting Park. And together our organizations working in collaboration with some other powerful entities like North 10, like the Hunting Park NAC, like Nicetown Tioga Improvement Team, Call to Serve CDC, and even on a small portion for doing major events, Esperanza. We're already out there doing this, and what we do in Hunting Park is try to be welcoming to all of these organizations that are bringing great things to the table. So we do a lot of cross work together on multiple projects. When you're talking about CBAs with major developers who are going to change the Hunting Park area from night to day with the development that's happening, we have already entered into 3 CBAs. And that work is unmatched throughout the city because you have a collaboration between organizations, and our eagles are out of it, and we're working together and we're bringing the information back to constituents. So I think that it almost seems like I'm patting myself on the back, but I'm happy that we have collaborations between strong organizations already, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We know what the community is looking for. We know the community's sad points and things of that nature, and we're addressing those issues on a wide scale, from bringing affordable housing to community members in these areas, from bringing food and medical information to members in these areas. We're doing the work, and our voice should be heard because we're touching on a consistent basis the constituents that sometimes our city council members only come when it's time to vote, or only come when it's a major event. We're there on ground in Hunting Park in the collaboration every day.
Yeah, and to the Hunting Park area or community that you generally kind of cover, it goes. It goes east of the park by some number of blocks, you would say. Is that
Oh, without question.
How far east?
Well, see, our constituents utilize the park, and they're on both sides. But
Mhm.
I'll just say that the 7th Councilmanic District has been a big aid to us, even though it's covered by Darrell. And this is no knock at any councilmanic member there. It's just that we have the tighter relationship with Maria when it comes to the park or the 7th Councilmanic District and all things Hunting Park, because this is the top of Darrell's district where his attention and his drive may be closer to Strawberry Mansion. But when we need them, we can call on them and we can work. But it's the funny thing is that, you know, we have the relationship. And I think that over the years, Maria and Darrell work closely when issues have risen in Hunting Park. She may be on the ground because she grew up there and she has the organizations, and she'll forward the information to Darrell's office and we'll get things done. I'll be sad to lose it because we've benefited from having both so close to each other. But when we need things, we'll go to Maria and she'll take it to Darrell. I would hate for the relationship Hunting Park become even further isolated by going across into the 8th or the 9th or anything of that nature, when the working relationships and organizations have already over the years built our relationship between the 5th and the 7th.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that was my sense of the area here, and I think that was actually a really illustrative example of where, you know, elected officials, again, they have a lot of ground to cover here,
Yes.
A lot of ground to cover in these districts, right? And then just if a given district only covers a piece of a neighborhood or a piece of a community, it just can be more challenging in that area to kind of work either with that member or an adjacent member to get things done. So it's good to hear that you know, things have kind of been working pretty well up there. And I should have maybe missed this the outset, but I was talking at length about how we have a challenge here in focusing on the council district boundaries specifically, which is the purpose of these meetings, and separating like the folks who happen to represent them at a given point in time, which especially when we will have an election in a couple of years in 2020. But I think that was a really helpful example again of where you know, some areas, even if they're technically split between districts here, you kind of have to figure it out and work across multiple offices. I mean, when you pull back the lens, there are all sorts of instances around the city where that has to happen in some shape or form. But just real quick, because I think this is really helpful to kind of put out there. So the Hunting Park community, you would say, was stretches how far to the east? Is there like a yes?
So the Hunting Park community, I generalize with my organization and other organizations that I work with, constituent wise and events and things of that nature. We'll go from broad to about 5th. With the individuals who can walk and work and play in the Hunting Park area.
Right.
So we'll go from Broad to 5th, and then we'll go from Hunting Park, and with the relationship with North 10 and Nicetown, NAC and things of that nature, we'll go down to Sedgley. We'll go all the way down to Sedgley in the works that we're doing together as nonprofits and organizations. So we'll lean on both offices, but generally the line stops at 9th Street, that little patch. But our constituents will come from 5th all the way over to the park area and things of that nature.
Got it. So that's a great deal of territory here. I mean, for folks who aren't particularly familiar, or at least are trying to find themselves on the map. I mean, Sedgley is all the way down here by the rail line at the southern part of this extension on the 5th. The park itself is way up here, and I guess you said it's. I guess it varies a little bit as far as the constituents you serve. 9th Street is more the boundary down here, and then it's more like 5th as you get close to the park.
Correct, and I'm talking constituent wise and organizations as we deal with the constituents in those particular areas, from walking to the park and attending events, and our relationship with the 25th Police District, doing major events in collaboration with organizations in that area that I described, from 5th Street to 9th, from Hunting Park down to Sedgley. We have relationships with the strongest of organizations in those areas, and we're making great strides to bring services to constituents there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. So again, Leroy and Majida, thank you so much. I think that alone was like, I think, so instructive for the rest of us as to how like this gets complicated, right? I mean, on the ground, it's not straightforward, kind of like who's working where the shared boundaries are. And then, as far as the council district boundaries go, I mean, sometimes it really has a consequence of some sort. Other times, a little bit less so. So
it's territorial with organizations. It's territorial with residents. Not being. I think sometimes we get lost in. We may know councilmatic districts and boundaries as organizations because we work with our elected officials a little closer. But the constituents that they serve just need the help, and they'll go to the organizations that are on the ground closest to them, who are demonstrating projects, and sometimes it's a miss because they could even benefit more by utilizing our councilmatic districts from Maria's office on 9th Street and Daryl's office on the other. But there's a miss because they're not relating to them and may not know the particulars or boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Really helpful to know. Well, I guess we'll keep going here. Anyone else, folks who live or work in this area who are with us this evening would want to either weigh in or ask questions. Again, I mean, we're particularly interested in, community boundaries to the extent those are kind of defined and well known. And then if you have any opinion at all on the current council district boundaries themselves, kind of where they are, any initial thoughts?
Hey, Pat, I'm not sure, but I know Ms. Joyce Brooks, I know that you signed up to speak. Are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
I forgot what I was asking. I forgot my questions, but anyway, one of my questions in my brain right now is, with this redistricting, will we lose? I think I asked this question before. Will we lose funding through the organizations that we do have in our 8th district? Because I'm in the 8th district. I live in the 8th district. Okay, in Nicetown. So will we lose some programs or funding with I think we need to gain some people. Is that what we need to do? I think we're one of the low numbers in the 8th district.
Yes, you need to gain.
We need to gain, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mr. Joyce, great question. I'll take a stab at it. So yeah, like you noted there, the 8th district, the 8th council district, which again is a big one, all the way up from
Right.
Chestnut,
Exactly.
Mount Airy, Germantown, and then all the way down to Nicetown, Tioga, down to Lehigh Ave, right? So it's a huge district. And as far as like kind of what the consequences would be with the boundary shift in one way or another, they're not as direct as, you move from one district to another and all of a sudden like the funding changes at your local school or your local rec center. It doesn't work quite like that. It's more if your community is, again, if it's split across multiple districts, or if it's in the far-flung part of a district where it just doesn't get a lot of attention from the elected official for whatever reason, that's where there could be consequences in terms of like, that elected official fighting for funding or working to address issues in a given area. And again, being very, very cognizant here of not mentioning, individual district council members from across the city. That is a consideration. That's a kind of a bigger consideration in that, some of these districts, I mean, all of them are quite big, and the neighborhoods and communities within them are quite different. Right. I mean, and the 8th district is probably as good of an example of that as any, with it stretching all the way up to the northwest edge of the city, and then extending all the way deep into all the way to Lehigh Ave. So short answer though is no, it's not like your funding at your local rec center will change right away with the boundary shift in one way or another. But again, we generally want to make sure for communities that may be split by these boundaries right now, and they may not want to be split in the way they are, that they have a chance to kind of weigh in on that. But I think a Nicetown, at least just looking at the map here, and like Ms. Majida was stressing, at least Nicetown proper, like the boundaries of Nicetown that most folks are familiar with, seems to be pretty firmly already within one district.
And hey, just to follow up, Ms. Brooks, I think, I mean, no, just like Pat, Pat is correct, but I think, the issue is, if your community or your neighborhood or your division shifts into a different district, I think, as a community leader, it's important to look at the councilmatic priorities, right? And I think when we talk about councilmatic redistricting, we have to talk about councilmatic priorities. And
Right.
what is councilmatic priorities, right? It can be from, hey, I want to make sure that all my corridors are very, the businesses on the corridors have funding. I want to make sure that all my rec centers in my neighborhood are fully staffed and have the resources needed. I want to make sure that, organizations, it's about that particular council person's priorities, right? So if you wake up and you for years in your organization and you've been in this, you've been like, we look at the Logan and Allegheny area and we look at one particular area where the 8th district comes into the 9th councilmatic district. That area has been shifted every 10 years since 2001, from 2001, 2011. So in that particular, group of people, they've shifted to 2 different council people in 20 years, right? And when we talk about councilmatic priorities, right? Who's going to fight for the issues, right? Who's going to fight to make sure that our trash are being picked up? Who's going to fight to make sure that, we have safety in our communities? I think all this stuff, and indirectly and directly ties back to councilmatic redistricting, but also ties back to councilmatic priority.
Priorities, yeah, that's the word. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, our priorities. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Yeah, because we got some priorities we need to be looking at. I mean, I've been in this community 52 years, so I see a lot of changes that went on in our district. It was it was really good when we moved in here, but I don't know. Seemed like we're lacking some things. We'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, of course, no, our pleasure. And also just again to stress, folks, like there will be other opportunities to kind of weigh in on this. I realize for a lot of us here, we're looking at this for the first time, but there's an online survey. We'll make sure everybody gets more opportunities in January as well to take a look at these boundaries. Leroy, your hand just go up.
Yeah, and hearing that conversation just now, what came to mind in the most pertinent word with our councilmatic districts and things of that nature is the relationships we have with our councilmatic members. So relationships will change if you redistrict. Now I have to learn who this new council person is in a particular area where they weren't familiar. And if you haven't built that relationship up, it's kind of hard when you're looking at things like activity grants or them coming to your events and things of that nature. So you have to now discover and build a new relationship with who's ever elected. And of course, elections can change things all the time, but you have to develop new relationships with that new council person. And let's all keep in mind, we should all have relationship with our at-large councilmatic members also for handling issues in our particular districts.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Thank you so much, Leroy.
That was an excellent point. I like that. I like that part. Yeah, the relationship. Yeah. Thank you.
So, I mean, as I stated before, your feedback is important. And, what I want to do too is 2 things. I want to yield the floor to our council offices who represent the councilmatic districts for, any feedback. But also too, I want to yield the floor after that to State Representative Leroy Potter. And, because we are still in the midst of state redistricting, and those, maps are going to be dropping this month or early next month, which is a very important part of Nicetown in this particular area as well. So I'll yield the floor to, I guess we can start with Charlita from Councilman Jones' office.
Sure. I'm gonna see if Josh is still on. I'm just going to defer to Josh.
I'm still here. I think
I'm
I can
sorry,
speak.
I'm sorry, Josh. My apologies.
I think I can speak for the office. For the purposes of today's discussion, our district represents parts of Allegheny West only, and I don't believe there are any constituents or groups represented in Allegheny West. We don't even actually represent all of Allegheny West, just up to 24th Street. But the the conversation is excellent, because, you know, things may not change too much of where we are, but in other parts of our district, we're likely to change because we have the least populated district as it stands right now. So we have to gain population from somewhere. And it's good to hear feedback from constituents, although not technically our constituents, but good just to hear some of your feedback is good to hear, and we can bring it back to our boss. And I think that's all. And I appreciate you having us here. And I think I'll see you probably in a couple of weeks at the one for the Northwest. Take care.
Appreciate it. I'm going to next call Mr. Wang from Councilwoman Brooks' office. Now, even though Councilwoman Brooks is a citywide council person, at the end of the day, if they don't meet this deadline, she too and citywide council members are impacted by this. So I would love to hear someone from our office get some feedback as well.
Unfortunately, I don't really feel comfortable speaking on behalf of the council member. So this is something that we're looking at. I will say that like the next meeting we have on this is Monday, and I'm supposed to provide an update based on notes I've taken tonight. So I can probably provide you guys more feedback on Monday afternoon. But as of right now, you know, I don't think I can really provide any comments on behalf of the council member. But you know, again, very grateful this is happening. Very grateful to hear from all the folks here.
Thank you. Before I get to you, Ms. Miller, do we have anyone from Councilwoman Cindy Bass's office or Councilmatic District 8 office? No. Ms. Linda?
I just have a question. Does anyone know yet when City Council is going to be doing their public hearings on redistricting? Is there been a date set as of yet?
I mean, I'll take a stab at that unless one of our council staffers with us has an idea and would like to weigh in. Ms. Linda, you know, we don't right now, and I'll just give you my suspicion. My guess is that City Council has a great deal on its plate right now. They have multiple committee meetings every single day, and they're grinding to get through a number of pieces of legislation before the holidays. So I don't think redistricting has come too high up on the kind of the radar yet. But of course, with the closer we get to mid-February, which is the legal deadline, I'm sure this will. I suspect there've been some number of conversations inside council, but there's been no public announcement yet about what exactly the plan will be in terms of public hearings or accepting citizen maps or anything of that sort. You know, I'm surely the council president, which is always the case, the council president will have, you know, something to say about how that will work. So that's in a nutshell the answer. We're just not sure yet, but we'll be looking to find out as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I would agree with Pat. We only have 3 more sessions left in this term, tomorrow and the following 2 Thursdays. I would be surprised if anything was introduced in those 3 days, more likely at the first council session back in January.
Thank you.
Hey, Pat, do you want to kind of talk a little briefly about state redistricting, and then we can ask to bring up State Representative Derisha Parker?
Oh, sure. Yeah, just briefly. So, so folks, there are multiple levels of redistricting happening, as Abu noted earlier, and the council redistricting is one level, right, with our 10 districts. We have 203 House districts across Pennsylvania. Those are also being redrawn. Roughly 26 of them cover the city of Philadelphia. We also have 50 state Senate districts that cover the state, with a handful that cover Philly. And those have been worked on for weeks and weeks and weeks by a 5-member body in Harrisburg, which incidentally, Representative Joanna McClinton, our own Representative McClinton, sits on this very powerful body, which is probably a good thing for the city of Philadelphia. And we're expecting that they will release their mapping plans, their House plan and their Senate plan quite soon. We thought it could have been this week, if not this week, maybe the week after. And when they do that, there will be at least a 30-day period for public review and feedback, which, you know, rest assured, as soon as those maps drop, the day of, you'll be hearing from us. And just like we kind of discussed this evening, you know, the idea is like, take a look at the boundaries. If it splits your community, if there are other issues with where the boundaries are that you think may not suit your area well, that's really important feedback. And we'll have to see exactly what the commission says as far as like how they want to accept that feedback along the way. But Representative McClinton being a member of that commission will be one very important conduit for sure. So that's kind of the quick table setting. And yeah, Representative Parker, if there's anything else to add on or insights, I'd welcome that for this group.
Hi, good evening, everybody. And I've stated it on a previous call that was led by Ms. Joyce Brooks. It's been about maybe 4 to 5 weeks. All of the members of the State House have been obtained by legal counsel. So as it relates to redistricting, there's nothing I really can say or weigh in on. I'm just here to just listen and just, learn as much as I possibly can. And especially because a lot of things are being recorded. I'm not trying to be subpoenaed or have anybody subpoenaed as regard to what was being discussed. So I'm just here to learn. That's really all I'm doing. I can't even weigh in or comment or whatever. So I know it sounds very vague, but it is what it is. And that is what happened because we have been obtained by legal counsel. So one of the things that I have been saying and have been stressing is that's why every 6 months elections do matter and why voting is extremely important for individuals. Because again, you have your representative who we have been in the minority for 11 months. And that is the result of the other side of the aisle are able to dictate what happens. So that's pretty much what I'm able to weigh in on tonight's call. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for being here, Rep. Parker. Appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
I know that's probably the shortest spill you ever got about a politician, so And I'm running for re-election, so it was really short and sweet. So thank you.
All right. Any feedback from anyone else? I know that we want to keep this time respectable and give our, their time back to everyone. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I kind of wanted to go to, what next? What can we do next? I think, with members of your community, please make sure that you share your ideas to your council members. And also, we would love for you to complete a survey about your community or part of the city that you think, should change in your district. And, we are not just having these community meetings. We are in the process of planning the aftermath in January and February. We don't know exactly what that looks like. We may, start to develop different section meetings where, Northwest, Southwest. We're not sure how many meetings we're going to have. We're not sure if council is going to have their own particular meetings in their districts. And if so, how do we help build capacity to those meetings? So there's a couple of things that we're in the process of kind of figuring out where do we move for once they release their maps. What do we do in January and February to make sure that everything we've done during this time is not considered in vain and that your voices and your concerns are literally brought to the table of the lawmakers.
Hey, Abu.
Yes.
One of the things that may not have been addressed, and I know everybody's been talking about city council, I will make sure that some of the individuals on tonight's call receive information as it relates to one of the most powerful committees that's happening in the state is our state government committee that have been hosting various redistricting and reapportionment meetings. So sometimes it gives you a view so you can hear for yourself of the decision maker that makes up this panel that are weighing in on, individuals and giving their chance for certain testimonies to take place. So if there's more that happens between now and before things happen, I'll make sure that individuals get a link. So if they can't be in person, that they can see virtually what is happening on the state level. And we're extremely proud and very excited that we do have representation from our leader, Joanna McClinton.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think, that's my segue. What we're going to do after this, everyone's going to get a copy of this video. We're making this as transparent as possible. If you want a copy of all the folks who registered for this event, please let me know. I only send those out per request. And, it doesn't stop, just because we're not organizing these community input sessions. I charge you as community leaders to go out and take this information. If you need a copy of this PowerPoint, continue to have these conversations in your district. Go deep into your boundaries of your district and have the conversations with those community folks who are on the borderline of these districts that may change from a block or from a division or from a ward. And making sure that their voices are heard. We all know that our communities are dealing with a lot of issues when it's gun violence, when it's, education for schools, where it's, trying to increase our Black-owned businesses in our city. There's a lot of things that's happening, but we have to make sure that we are putting people in office that has our priorities at the forefront of their agenda. Because, enough is enough. This process has not been transparent. And this opportunity that we're doing is we're hoping that it will make a difference in the future to make this process about councilmatic redistricting more transparent and inclusive to everyone. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Pat to close us out.
Sure. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, and thanks for bearing with us through, again, a lot of content that many of us might have been seeing for the very first time, and then starting to wrestle with the boundaries themselves and the various ways they may sort of change. With what you're seeing in front of you, just again, we really want to stress that there are multiple opportunities to weigh in here. If you're like, a little anxious that tonight you weren't sure exactly what the issue was or how you might weigh in, there is still plenty of time for that. This is something, please, take this to other members of your community. There are a number of resources available at this website here at the bottom, 70.org/DrawPhilly, handouts, a public survey that's available. And these resources, the handouts and the surveys are available in upwards of 6 languages, including Spanish, which I know, especially in Eastern North Philly, many Spanish-speaking Philadelphians. There's actually new video that was just finished this evening, which we'll be posting on the website. Just if we can get the word out kind of far and wide in this very tight window between basically this month here, early December, and then January, February, it's going to be pretty important. So the survey here is listed there, number 2, also on the website. For those, Abu mentioned this earlier, but for those who really want to sink their teeth in, there are mapping tools available, like the one we put up earlier. And if you really want to start tinkering with the map and get a sense of like how the population figures will change as you move, division by division by division, that's a great way to experiment. And then, at least on the council side, really critically, once they introduce a mapping proposal, which will basically be in a bill, a piece of legislation that'll be presumably sometime in January. We don't think December, but sometime in January. That's when, again, you'll be hearing from us very, very quickly, the day of, and making sure everybody has as much time as possible to kind of take a look at that map and again, weigh in again. So also, just like we noted with the state house and state senate districts that will also come out very soon, count on hearing from us. So you can take a look, and again, if there's good things you like in there, that's all good. If there are things you think need to change as far as where those boundaries are, that's important feedback for the map makers as well. So yeah, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll be talking to you all soon. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great job. I did leave my number in the chat for people from the 198th districts. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Take care. I'm gonna do this. You on my